Oh man, I'm getting so stir crazy, you know. I have a nice little setup here watching movies, but I really want to go back to the theater. I'm missing the theater so much.
I was actually thinking that same exact thing the other day, where I'm just kind of miss it. I mean, I don't miss the people, because you know me,
I don't like the people
I don't like
either.
people in the crowds, and just, you know, people making all kind of noise and poor theater etiquette. But I miss just the experience, I guess, of sitting in a theater by myself watching a movie.
I also miss the popcorn. I haven't had a good like hot butter popcorn in a couple months now, and it's getting at me. I'm scratching.
The thing is, I never bought the popcorn because it's too damn expensive, and I'm already paying through the nose for whatever. I mean, I would always
support your theater, Andrew.
They already get enough of my money.
No, they don't. The ticket prices go to the fucking studio. Theater didn't get any of that.
I know, but I don't know, $7 for popcorn?
Andrew, stop being a cheapskate, okay? You bought like 1,000 Blu-rays like me, okay?
I know, it
sound like an old man.
I know, old grouchy man just yelling at nothing.
Like he's got like a family of kids and stuff, you know, to support and stuff. Come on, man.
I know, but I do miss that experience a lot. I mean, I tell you, I miss the smell of the popcorn.
Yes.
There's nothing that really
the atmosphere going to the theater and the anticipation of seeing something you're excited to see, sitting down in the seats, getting comfortable, maybe with a friend, you know, like just the shit comes on. There's like 30 minutes of trailers. That's annoying.
Oh, goodness.
But
did I ever tell you? I think I did. I told you. I didn't tell the people in the podcast land, and we should introduce ourselves.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, this is of course, Cinema Discovery Project, which you obviously know since you've clicked on whatever
I would think so,
on. I'm Andrew Cabral, and I'm always here with my co-host, Stephen Billings.
Hi, I'm Stephen Billings. I am a robot.
And we're just waxing nostalgically about missing the movie theater experience, because who knows when that's ever going to open back up. They're shooting, Hollywood's shooting for July. They really want to get some of those July movies out, but I
really want to see Tenet. I really want to see Tenet.
Yeah, that's the one that I really want to see. I think Christopher Nolan's the only one holding that movie into July.
Yeah, the studio would have already moved it by now.
They would have moved it. But he's got some pull, apparently. Who knows? Maybe because the movies make $1 billion a piece.
You got to think, if you hold true and the theaters get themselves back open and people actually go, that movie's going to make so much money.
Yeah, because there'll be nothing else
to see. And like, people have been just, wanting to get out and spend some money.
I'll say this, though. I was just talking earlier. Drive-in movie theaters are going to be getting lots of business. I know there's only like one drive-in, I think, in my state. And apparently it's all sold out tonight and tomorrow night.
That's awesome, yeah.
But I think they're doing like restricted.
Well, they are. There's one that's not too far from me, and they're doing the same thing. They got rules. You can only have, I think typically they have a lot more, but I think they said the capacity will probably be only 200 cars.
I don't know what they're going to be showing. I probably should have looked that up, but whatever it is, people want to see it. They could be re-releasing things for all we know.
It could be some things that released to VOD. That now will get some sort of in-theater experience now. Maybe like the Trolls movie or something. I don't know. But,
I mean, that could be the case. But when it came to movie trailers, those have slowed down a little bit online. But when it came to seeing them in the movie theater, one theater that I typically went to only showed 3. They would show 3 for every screening. And honestly, sometimes the trailers would be the older trailers. And
the movie's already playing in the theater next door, and you're like, why is this one here?
No, but it would just be like, let's say a new trailer dropped, I don't know, 2 weeks ago, but then another trailer had dropped a few months ago. Yeah. They'd be playing the older one from a few months ago, even though the new one's available. So it's just like them dropping the ball when it comes to whoever puts those trailers packages together for them, and it always kind of bothered me because it's like, just hire me, I'll do it.
Jesus, you talk about, you won't even buy $7 popcorn.
Yeah, but I'll put their trailers together if they pay me. But then the other theater I went to, they showed like 6 or 7 of them before. It was like 25 minutes of trailers, and I'm like, this is too much.
And the thing is it's only gotten worse because we're like, the etiquette of coming to the theater is, it's okay to be late. Like they're basically they're giving padding for the people that like to come in at the last minute.
Right.
And
I mean, so I like to get there typically earlier.
yeah, I like to get there at least 20 minutes early. Yeah.
If someone walks in during the trailers, I don't get mad. If I walk in during the trailers, I hope no one gets mad at me.
The thing is it's easier for people to be late because they can get a ticket online and they got their seat guaranteed. So then they'll wait to the last minute to show up.
Well, the thing is, the theaters I go to don't have reserved seating, so it's,
and then they just do it because they're
want.
ignorant. Yeah, now they're just ignorant. But backing out of that, well, you know, if you caught our last episode, we talked about great directors' debuts, great first movies in directors' careers, and that was great. That was fun. And so now we're gonna do the flip side, and we found while trying to research this a lot more difficult, and that is good last movies. I'm not going to say masterpiece last movies, but serviceable, solid last movies from filmmakers' careers.
Yeah, and I think I think at the end we're going to perhaps say some other last films by directors that we haven't seen yet.
Some that are known for being pretty good and.
Yeah, and also perhaps just some last films by notable directors in general that we haven't seen.
Maybe they weren't
people
good.
Like Francois Truffaut and Fellini, Truffaut, people like that we've talked about many times, and we're always wondering where did their careers end, because we've always talked about where their careers started.
Yeah.
We've always talked about that. And what I found to be so difficult about preparing for this episode is a lot of these films are tough to find to watch.
Yeah.
If you don't have, the DVD or Blu-ray in your collections already. If you're trying to find them streaming anywhere or anything like that, just to, watch them quickly, they're really tough to find even streaming. And that was kind of a pain in the neck. And also, some of these films I've never heard of before, just because I hadn't thought about them. But this is going to be similarly structured to what we did last week. Steve and I will go back and forth in terms of
throw one out there at each other, see if we can...
Yeah, we'll see each other's reactions and whatnot. Do you care who goes first?
Didn't matter to me. You if you want to go first, go ahead.
Who went first last time? Was it you? Or
I don't know. I don't remember.
I don't remember. You know what? I'll start out because I did tell Steven I had a hot take.
He wants the heavy hitters. He's going to hit you in the face really hard when
we're going with a scalding hot take, and the hot take of the day for me is the last film from my favorite director of all time, Stanley Kubrick, and that is Eyes Wide Shut, which came out in 1999, starring Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman. And I think this was towards the end of their marriage, I think. I'm not quite sure about celebrity relationships.
Probably. This movie probably ruined their relationship.
Around that time. Anywho, this film is rather divisive in terms of some people love it, and some people hate it. And I'm one of the people who love it. I'm one of the people who love it to the point where when I was going through Stanley Kubrick's filmography, when I got to Eyes Wide Shut, the film had such an impact on me that it cemented him as my favorite filmmaker of all time. That's how great I think this film is, because it's so hypnotic in so many of its ways. And of course, it's always remembered for being a very overtly sexual film. It's a film that does depict large scenes of sex orgies, because Tom Cruise's character in this film ends up somehow getting a password to one of these, rich people sex parties, essentially. And everybody there is dressed in costume and masks, so it's all anonymous. And there's just this haunting sequence of him walking through this gigantic mansion, and just everywhere you turn, someone's having sex. Nudity everywhere. So of course, this film is not for everyone if you're, sensitive to that type of thing in your movies. But the film was also about the kind of the destruction of a marriage, or the kind of existential crises of a marriage, because there's a lot of contentious moments with Tom Cruise's character and Nicole Kidman's character, and it's really powerful in that regard. And it's one of those films that also takes place, I think, over a couple of nights or one night, and it's just an odyssey journey of this character. And the way in which Kubrick does this film is it's so haunting with its score and its mise-en-scène and its camera work. The way, Kubrick has done many of his things throughout his career, specifically like The Shining. I think the tone of The Shining is what really makes that film so frightening. And of course, that third act is just wild and crazy. But Eyes Wide Shut for me is just like, wow, nobody's making this type of movie.
Yeah.
Like, no one's trying to make this type of movie. And that's kind of what I really love about it. That's kind of what I love about a lot of cinema. It's like, who's pushing the boundaries? Who's willing to take that chance? And sometimes you swing for the fences and you miss. And, or sometimes you swing for the fence and you hit a home run. But for me, it's a very deep philosophical existential film. And it's not for everyone. And I know some people hate it. But I happen to be one who loves it.
All
Steven?
right. Yeah, I mean, I wish I have not seen that movie yet, and I might have mentioned it in another podcast. I'm not like a super Kubrick fan. I mean, I like some of his movies, but I'm not like a hardcore fan like you. But I'd like to check out that movie. I like Tom Cruise. I think he's crazy. I mean, he's going to space now,
yeah,
so
definitely crazy.
He's going to space now, so
he's always in space in his head.
Well, Scientology for you. All right, so I knew Andrew was going to have some heavy hitters on his list. I was going now. These directors, or some of them I would say are heavy hitters, but I'm going for some I would say more. Some of them are more journeymen. Some of them are a little older. I'll hit you with William Wyler's last film,
Nice.
The Liberation of L.B. Jones. I actually found this streaming on Amazon, which was. I was surprised, and this is kind of one of the movies that you kind of I think got used to seeing during that time, like kind of a deep Southy movie about racism. It recalls movies like In the Heat of the Night, or honestly, this movie somewhat kind of reminds me of a more recent movie, Three Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri. It has kind of that feel to it a little bit. But basically, this movie is about, deep-seated racism. I mean, it's about... Apparently, it's based on a book, and it's the exact account from this person's perspective of what was going on in this town during this time. And it's basically these corrupt cops that are just running amok in this town, and it's disturbing. A lot of it's actually, and there's actually some very gory scenes in this movie. For a William Wyler movie, I was like, this doesn't seem like anything I've ever really seen him do. Like he's like getting some frustration out or something. I don't know what it is, but it's a very off the wall movie for his filmography, and for it to end up being his last movie, I thought was very interesting. Because you're used to seeing like. Best Years of Our Lives, I think the closest I've seen to something like this was something that he did like maybe 5 years earlier than that, which was The Collector, where, Terrence Stamp plays like a killer that kidnaps a woman, and like, so that was closer to this, but like, this movie is very 70s. It feels very 70s, and it's the start of the decade, and I would say, if there's a critique I have, it feels like his direction in this movie feels like he's making the movie from back in the 40s. It doesn't have a lot of style. It's very, I would say, just by the book directed. But there's some very shocking scenes, and it's a hard-hitting movie that I think you could get some enjoyment out of, and maybe some perspective out of the situation. But it's worth taking a look at. You got what's the actor's name?
Lee J.
Yeah. He plays the lawyer in the movie, and he's pretty good in the movie. But yeah, I mean, just checking out some of these all-time great directors and look at what their last movie is, I'm like, this is an interesting, like, from where he started out in his career to where he is there. He started out in the 40s, and ended there at the 70s.
Yeah, 1970. He started out. Oh man. actually started out
in the 30s,
doing shorts in the 20s.
See, yeah, his
silent
and just
shorts,
to see where their minds are, that far, going 4 decades later, 3 decades later, So
it's always fascinating to me to watch. That's why when I always tell people if you want to get into some of these all-time directors or even any director, I always like to start from the beginning and you work your way forward.
Yeah.
Because you like to see, because the evolution can sometimes be really fascinating to see, like, what do they do, especially with long careers. Like, this one spans, like, what, was like 3 decades
4
or
decades,
so?
yeah.
Even more? 4 decades? I was close. And it's just, you just see the way, like, filmmaking and, like, the films change over time. Yeah. Like, a movie made in the 20s is not going to be the same way a movie's made in the 60s or 1970. Or
not even
like
just the technical, but just the
aesthetics.
Just not the technical or the aesthetics, but just the the most interesting thing for me is what's on the director's mind. What are they talking about in their movies? What are they interested in, and are they able to do it in a way that's they're still making good movies? Like sometimes they might have something to say, but they don't know how to say it, or they say it in a way that's maybe off-putting, which I think is a lot of what Oliver Stone does nowadays. I think Oliver Stone always has something to say, but sometimes he says it in a way that is maybe too abrasive.
Well, not only that, but he says it
he doesn't. He picks a side, and it's usually a controversial side.
Not only that, but it's usually his.
That's what I'm saying. He doesn't. He never makes a movie that's like, "Hey, here's this thing. You decide for yourself."
Oh no. Yeah. He made when he made JFK, it's like he really dove headfirst into the conspiracy theory of the assassination of JFK and stuff like that. Like he's not saying
he's like, here, this is the history.
He didn't play the other side where he's like, maybe none of this actually
he's
happened.
Like, this is the history.
This really did happen. That's the way he plays it. But I guess switching from that, going to another filmmaker whose career spanned all the way from the 20s into the 70s, coincidentally, is Alfred Hitchcock.
Yes.
And his last film was Family Plot, which was 1976, and starring Karen Black and Bruce Dern. And it's a film that's very much up his alley, not exactly departing from what he hadn't already done with the past. It's it's a mystery, a crime drama with a little bit of dark comedy thrown in there. And it's been years since I've seen it. So the IMDb synopsis is: a phony psychic / con artist and her taxi driver / private investigator boyfriend encounters a pair of serial kidnappers while trailing a missing heir in California. So right there, it's a caper, which is very, very, very much up Hitchcock's alley. And it's not the best film in his filmography. I don't think it's the worst film in his filmography, but it's kind of somewhere in there somewhere. You know what I mean? It's not the worst, but it's his last film because he did pass away, I want to say a few years later, and by that point he was already quite. Yeah, he passed away in 1980, so he passed away a few years later. And if you've seen him in the late 70s, he wasn't doing well with, health and age and stuff like that. But it's a solid film. It's a solid film. I think it's kind of cool to see Bruce Dern back in the 70s, because I think Bruce Dern, when people see him now, just assume he's been this old man this whole time, just randomly showing up in movies. Like, he just randomly shows up now and as a character actor. And we talked about Karen Black when we talked about the spotlight we did on 5 Easy Pieces. So there was another film in that era that was that she was in. And it's part of that whole kind of, it's not quite a new Hollywood film, but it's fascinating for me to see Alfred Hitchcock playing in the post MPAA rating area and see what he does, because he made Frenzy right before this, which I think is a great film, and he was finally able to really flesh his more macabre and sinister muscles with that film. And this film is kind of like it's not as grotesque as that one is. It's not as I wouldn't say gory, but as violent. And this film is more like a come down to something that's more in his wheelhouse. So it's kind of more of an average film for him. But I thought I would bring it up because he is considered one of the all-time greats, and I think it's important to recognize his last work as well. And his last work often gets not watched, or not talked about. Everyone seems to stop at like Psycho or Marnie, and no one watches like his mid-60s work, late 60s work, and his 2 films he did in the 70s. No one really gives those films a fair shot. So I thought I would mention Family Plot. It also has a great ending, a great reveal at the ending of of course it deals with a MacGuffin and stuff like that, classic Hitchcock stuff.
Cool. All right. Well, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna throw you another old timey guy. I guess we'll probably work our way forward, but Mr. Michael Curtiz.
Nice.
His last film was a Western with John Wayne. And it is the Comanches.
Oh, the Comancheros?
Yeah.
I've been wanting to watch this movie for like 7 years. But go on.
Yeah. It's honestly, it's very much a classic Western movie. I mean, it is definitely a John Wayne vehicle. And, I haven't seen a ton of John Wayne movies, but it's definitely the feel-good John Wayne movies. It's not your Sergio Leone, bloody westerny. It's the colorful, cheery, kind of almost in this movie particularly almost like a buddy cop western, because you got John Wayne who plays like a Texas Ranger, and he's told to go and arrest this man played by Stuart Whitman, who plays Paul Regret, which is a terrible last name. And he's a gambler, and he's on this ship, and he has to go and arrest him, and basically he gets away from him at one point, and then they meet back up again, and then I don't want to give away the whole movie, but it's very much, one guy's on one side, one guy's on the other side, and then they kind of come together to fight another enemy, which is this kind of war profiteering group of men that are like selling guns to the Native American Indians, and that are become kind of a pest in that area. They're like burning down towns and stuff, and so it's a very entertaining movie. It's not very it's not slow. He keeps the pace moving, and it's got some great scenery. A lot of these old westerns were shot on locations, and it looks really nice. And it's not like I said, it's not the most hard hitting western. It's not Red River. It's not The Searchers. It's not, but it's definitely a fun, entertaining something that Michael Curtiz would have done before. I mean, this is the guy that did Casablanca. He's done some great films over the years, and this is like kind of just like you could almost say a greatest hits of things that he did throughout his career, and in this western where John Wayne was kind of, this is 1960, right. Westerns kind of people don't care about the western as much anymore. So
no, by the I would say mid 60s, late 60s, the western genre is kind of on its way out, or it's shifted extremely.
Yeah. Clint Eastwood was becoming the next western star.
Well, yeah, the spaghetti westerns kind of changed everything, and I think it changed the genre for the better, to be honest with you. But after the spaghetti westerns came out, there were a few people who were still clinging to this kind of old western, like you're talking about, the Comancheros, this John Wayne western, the classic John Wayne western, and John Wayne was the only one who was clinging to those.
Well, he was comfortable. He was comfortable with what he did. Yeah.
Yeah, well, he did not like the spaghetti westerns, obviously because he's old school.
Because he can only do so much as an actor, so he doesn't want to change his style.
Not only that, but even into the 70s, up until he died, he was making the same type of westerns that you're talking about here.
You could say True Grit maybe was the only one that changed things up a little bit. Yeah,
really. Yeah,
and he won an Academy Award for it.
Film. He did. He did. I guess I will. If you're gonna go with a John Wayne western, I guess I'll go with one myself.
Sure.
I'll go with Howard Hawks' last film, Rio Lobo, which was also coincidentally streaming on Amazon as of this podcast. And this actually came out 9 years after the film you just talked about. This came out in 1970. So as I was just saying, John Wayne still making the same type of Western, 1970. And this is, of course, like I said, directed by Howard Hawks, Rio Lobo. Basically, after the Civil War, John Wayne plays this character called Corbin McNally, and he was like a colonel or a captain in the war, and he's searching for a traitor who, he gave some information to the rebels, and it caused like one of his men to die. So he's hunting down this character this whole time, and he ends up in this town of Rio Lobo, where like the sheriff is corrupt, and like there's like and he's kind of like running the show and just like taking the law into his own hands. So it kind of has that whole like wild, like untamed, unruly West type feel to it. And of course, John Wayne is the hero, and he's uncovering all this kind of stuff, and he's taking down the bad guys and all this kind of stuff. So it's not a great movie, but like I said, it's kind of an average John Wayne Western, and I think it's an average film from Howard Hawks. It wouldn't be the worst Howard Hawks film I've ever seen, but it's not a 5-star movie. It's more of in like the 3 to 3.5 range type movie. It's solid. The filmmaking is solid, and it's a fun time to watch, but it's not really going to change the Western genre at all or anything like that. It's not the best we've seen from Hawks or John Wayne, but it's one that I had wanted to watch just because I've always been a fan of Howard Hawks. He's someone who I think a lot of people, when they first get into classic film, they somehow end up watching a lot of Howard Hawks' stuff. They end up watching, like you mentioned, Red River, or he did The Big Sleep, To Have and Have Not. Sergeant York is another great one. Only Angels Have Wings, Bringing Up Baby. He has a very versatile filmography, and Westerns happen to be one of them. He also did Rio Bravo, which was another John Wayne Western. That's a good Western. The thing with Rio Bravo is that it's the Howard Hawks John Wayne answer to High Noon, Fred Zinnemann's High Noon, about the whole House Un-Americans Committee and the blacklisting and all that kind of stuff. Those two films are very politically leaning films, and it's kind of interesting how they work together, I guess, several times in several Westerns. But Rio Lobo is not their best Western they worked with, but I would say it's not even the worst film that they worked in. But it was solid. Yeah. I enjoyed watching it.
Cool. All right. I might even be going a little further back than the ones we went. Yeah.
Ooh.
I know, right? Maybe the Cinema Discovery Machine. Here we go.
All the time in the world.
We're going to go to a director that I think is. I think you probably agree with me. One of the first great directors we ever had. F.W. Murnau.
Man, you went.
I know,
right?
His last movie is a movie called Taboo: The Story of the South Seas. And you can actually find this movie on YouTube for free right now.
Oh yeah, it must. What year did it come out?
1931. So.
Okay, yeah, it's.
So.
Yeah, we're talking 70.
Yeah,
it's probably in the public domain.
Yeah. But you can get a DVD, a Blu-ray, from Kino. I think it's got a lot of his stuff. But this movie is honestly it's basically the Romeo and Juliet kind of story. It's kind of a Shakespeare story. Basically, you got this island, the South Pacific island, and they kind of have these rituals, and they have they have this kind of, like, I guess you could say, religious belief that there's a woman in the village that has to stay pure, has to be a virgin, has to be, and basically the girl they have that's supposed to be that ends up falling in love with one of the men in the village. It's, and they're basically trying to stop them, so they run away and, try to live a life outside of there, but then they're still pursued by the founders of the island or whatever. It's a very simple story. The movie's only an hour 25 minutes, but it's very beautifully photographed. This is a movie, like I said, 1931. I mean, this is a silent film. The one interesting thing about it is a lot of times in silent films you have title cards that kind of give you some dialogue to give you maybe a little bit of context. They do that in the movie, but they don't. Like most of the talking is used almost through people writing letters. So it's like almost like when you find a good reason to do found footage the right way. They're using cue cards, not just, it has double meaning. They're not just using them for the obvious purpose of you needing to hear some dialogue or needing to see some dialogue, but that they're actually in the story. They're writing letters. They're doing the thing. Thought that was interesting, and it's just beautifully photographed. I mean, they're on real locations on islands, and they use a lot of non-actors, and they do all very good job. And I think a lot of silent film is just pure filmmaking because you really have to tell your story through visuals. You have to convey emotions, and there's a few moments in the movie where the female who's kind of stressing out about being founded by the I guess the founders of the island. It's this one particular old man who she keeps seeing in her dreams and who thinks she's seeing him in real life, but then he's not really there. And they do a couple scenes like that are kind of scary. And I'm like, that's pretty good. I mean, like for a silent movie, he's very much pulling off something very, very, incredible. And, for his last movie, which I think I don't think it was on this was very much a more tragic ending. I think Murnau was only like in his 40s when he died. I think he died in a car crash. So very much had a lot more filmmaking probably ahead of him. But this ended up being his last movie, and I think it was really good last movie. This is a guy that's done a lot of influential movies. He did Nosferatu. City Girl. He did Faust.
We're talking about FW.
Yeah, Faust, which is
Sunrise.
Yeah, I haven't watched it yet, but I hear it's really good. The Last Laugh is a silent film that's apparently really good. So it's definitely a worth your watch. I mean, it's like I said, you can check it out for free, or you can buy it, which I'll probably will buy it eventually. So.
Huh. So switching over to what I'm going to be talking about is, I'm not going to go as far back as Steven. I'm going to go a little, maybe it's not actually current at all.
The thing is most of ours are going to probably be a little later, because you got to think, these directors have to either be dead or they have to be retired. We can't pick directors that are like closer to our time.
That's another thing, is a lot of our current favorites are still working. Yeah. A lot of the people we talked about in last time's episode are all people still working.
Yeah, not all of us are Not all of them are Quentin Tarantino, and they're like, "Hey, I'm gonna quit after 10 movies." Bullshit.
Which that's even up in the air if that actually happens. But the last film from this particular director came out in 1959, as I was saying, and that is Imitation of Life, and that is directed by Douglas Sirk.
Okay.
And Douglas Sirk is famous for doing melodramas in the 1950s. These Technicolor, beautiful Technicolor melodramas in the 1950s. Films like All That Heaven Allows and stuff like that. And and this film is interesting to me because it's a remake, actually, of a 1934 film starring Claudette Colbert of the same name. So that's kind of fascinating that they would remake it like 25 years later. And this film is all about basically it stars Lana Turner, Sandra Dee is in the film, and it's about a woman played by Lana Turner. She befriends a homeless black woman, and they become friends. They share an apartment, but they each have daughters around the same age. So Lana Turner's character, I think at one point, hires but they're friends, but she hires her to give her a job and all that kind of stuff. So the daughters grow up together. But the thing is, the daughter of the African American character, who is can't find the name, but her name is Andy Johnson, played by Juanita Moore, is that the daughter is she's lighter skinned, she can pass for being white. So the daughter, without telling her mother, does that throughout through while she's growing up, because she understands that in America at that time, being white is more beneficial than being African American. So she tries to pass off as black, denying her African heritage, and really kind of shunning her mother and resenting her mother in that regard. So the film is extremely powerful. Like I said, it's a melodrama. So you're dealing with very dramatic sequences of confrontation, and just some people think melodrama's over the top and it's too much, and one can make that argument, but it's like, drama is supposed to be dramatic, so you might as well go for it if the material calls for it. And I think for something like this, dealing with race in the late 1950s, when we're in the middle of all that type of racial tension within this country and all that kind of stuff, this is some serious heavy-weighted stuff that I think still holds water today, and still is rather current in dealing with racial injustices and racism and all that kind of stuff. So Imitation of Life, I think, holds up extremely well, and it's a really great film by Douglas Sirk. Douglas Sirk is slowly becoming one of my favorite filmmakers of all time. I'm always happy to see or get more of his films in my collection. They're slowly starting to release his movies on Blu-ray, which is great because, like I said, he shoots in Technicolor, and Technicolor has those bold colors. So you really need the best showcase for them, I guess. Like he did a Magnificent Obsession, which is a great film. He did a film that came out, actually Magnificent Obsession recently got a Blu-ray release. He did All That Heaven Allows, and he did another film that I really like and I can't find right now. But yeah, his films always really are really good, and he did quite a few films in his career, and I think I want to see, he didn't actually pass away after this. He actually passed away in 1987, and this film came out in 1959. So we're talking many years of retirement here. He did do a few things afterwards, but they looked like they were all shorts where he was a supervising director. And the way I think we're kind of judging this is the last theatrical feature films.
We're not talking about anything maybe they've done on TV or
Yeah, I didn't include TV. I didn't even include TV movies or anything like that when I was doing my research. Or even I even debated whether to count documentaries.
I wasn't going to count documentaries either. Yeah.
Okay.
I feel like that's a little bit of a different beast. We're thinking theatrically released feature narrative films.
Yeah. So yeah, that's Imitation of Life. It is available on both DVD and Blu-ray, but the DVD and Blu-ray, they both are 2-packs where you get the original 1934 film as well as the 1959 film. I don't think they've ever released them separately. Maybe they have, and I just don't know it. But this is a collector's quandary here, Stephen. And maybe this has hit you before. Have you ever bought a DVD version of a movie and then a month or two later they announced the Blu-ray release?
I'm sure
because
it's happened.
That happened with me with Imitation of Life. And I still don't own the Blu-ray, and I look at the DVD every day in great regret.
Yeah, and then you paid more than you should have for the DVD. The DVD and the Blu-ray are the same price.
Yeah,
I'm fucking bullshit. Yeah, it happens sometimes, man. We get impatient and we buy something, and then unfortunately the movie gods are like, ha ha ha, here you
go. The powers that be working against you.
It happens sometimes. Well, I'm going to move on, and speaking of, you were talking about Bruce Dern being an actor that you're normally seeing old, and it's hard to think of him in any other way than him when he was in his older age. But I could say that about the actress in this movie, in this Filmmakers movie. This is a film from a director that's, I would say, looking at his career, is kind of almost reminiscent of Kubrick. And the thing is, he's actually made less movies. And that's Jack Clayton. And his last movie is The Lonely Passion of Judith Hearn. And this stars Maggie Smith, who is what I'm talking about. We're used to seeing Maggie Smith being elderly. She's in Harry Potter movies. she's done Downton Abbey.
She's in Downton Abbey.
But in this movie, this is back in 1987, so she's a little younger here, and this is honestly one of the first movies I've seen of her at this age. So it's like, it was nice to see her doing something different. But this is a movie from Jack Clayton, I've seen a few of his movies now, and he's only done, I think, 7 movies. He only did 7 movies.
Yeah, he's got 10 credits to his name, but I think he only did 7
features. Yeah.
And you have to, for those of you out there, have to go and look at the dates, because his filmography is so spread
and that's the other thing I was going to say. The other thing that makes me think of him as kind of like Kubrick is apparently he was very hard. He was very difficult, apparently. That's what he was labeled to be. So when it came to the studio, like Hollywood studio system, they didn't want to work with him because he was too picky and he was too demanding, because he only wanted to do the movies he wanted to do. So he had that perfectionism that Kubrick had, except Kubrick apparently was able to, work with the studios a lot better than he could. And they're both English, I think, too. So that another thing, another comparison. But I haven't seen Roof at the Top yet, which I hear is really good. But I've seen The Innocents, and that's a very they've already remade it, I think, at least a couple of times. And it's a horror movie, ghost story. And then The Pumpkin Eater, which was a very big surprise to me. I thought that was a really good movie. And he did The Great Gatsby in the 70s. He did Our Mother's House, which I haven't seen yet. He did Something Wicked This Way Comes, which is a great title. And then
I think that's an adaptation of the Ray Bradbury book. Yeah. I remember I had to read it for summer reading.
Yeah, it is. And yeah, I haven't seen it, but it looks like it might be pretty interesting too. And then the movie I'm going to talk about, The Lonely Passion of Judith Hearn. This movie is very melancholy. I think you'll like it. It's basically about a middle-aged woman who kind of lives in this kind of you could say it's like a house. It's like an apartment building, but it's a house where people share different rooms and they all come down and have breakfast, and you also got Bob Hopkins, who's in this movie. Hoskins. I say Bob Hopkins.
I didn't want to correct you.
No, I know I say his name wrong, but he plays the brother of the owner of the facility, and he's a very morally, the thing is you're supposed to like him, but then he does some not so nice stuff in the movie that it's not easy to like him. But this movie is very much about people that don't act in life. I think it's a movie about people that spend a lot of time wanting to do things or dreaming to do things, but then don't do them, and how lonely and sad that can be. And then to watch, Maggie Smith's character try to do them things that she wish she would have done earlier, and see her kind of how hard it is for her to do them things. It's sad. It's a sad movie, but it's a very well told story, a very well acted, and honestly, the thing about Jack Clayton's movies is they're just, I think, all stunning movies. I think the set direction, I think the way he frames shots, him and whoever his cinematographer is for whatever movie, I think he frames shots amazingly. I like his eye, and this is definitely, I got this movie from Powerhouse Indicator, has a release that they just released, and I think it has another release somewhere else, but it's worth a buy. It's very good, very, like I said, melancholy, but it's got some good themes in there, and it's a crier. It may be maybe you might cry, maybe, but it's good acting performance from Maggie Smith.
Nice. I have to check it out because I've only seen Innocence from him. That's the only film of his I've seen.
Typically, that one's rated one of his best, but honestly, it's not been my favorite of what I've seen so far. So, funny enough, yeah.
The Innocents starring Deborah Kerr, and that film is haunting.
Yeah.
I mean, it's supposed to be a ghost story type film.
Yeah, they just recently
haunting,
remade that
film.
movie with that movie Turning that came out. That was a remake of Innocence.
I didn't know that. Okay, then. I guess we'll move on to me. And I'm going to get into a movie now that I can't quite fully explain because it's a film you kind of have to watch on your own because it's that type of a heavy film.
Yeah.
And you'll understand when I tell you because it's part of a trilogy.
Okay.
And it's part of the Three Colors trilogy. And it's Three Colors Red, which is the third film in the trilogy. So I would recommend watching Blue, White, and
You're going to have to
Red.
watch the two other ones first.
Kind of have to watch the two other ones because they all do connect, and the connection all comes in this film.
You could say in a sense that all three movies are his last movie.
In a way, you could say that. They were all made at the very end of his career. And this is, of course,
Krzysztof
Kieślowski. And before I had seen any of his films, I kept hearing about the Three Colors trilogy. When I first started collecting Criterions, I kept hearing about the Three Colors trilogy. And then I bought it, and then I watched them. And then I also watched his film, The Double Life of Veronique, which is kind of a quasi Three Colors movie. I think you could call it like Three Colors Yellow or something like that. Or maybe green, I don't know. But it's...
maybe red, I don't know.
Maybe
Red 2, Part 2, I don't know.
I don't know, just pick a damn color. But each of these films are all about, like, all of them center around a certain theme, and they center around the theme of the French flag, where, like, each bar of the French flag, the colors blue, white, and red are liberty, equality, and fraternity, and each film kind of revolves around those themes in a certain way. And this film is a very cynical film, but it's all about like cynicism and connection and human connection and all kinds of stuff. And I could read you the plot, the synopsis, and it wouldn't even come close to what the movie's about. But the film is about this model her name is Valentine, and she is a young model living in Geneva, and she accidentally runs over a dog someday. She doesn't kill the dog, so it's not one of those movies where the dog dies, but she brings it over to, she finds the owner, and the owner's just this old retired judge who's just like cynic, negative about everything and pessimistic and all that kind of stuff. And the film is about relationship between human beings and all that kind of stuff. And I can't explain these films to people without justifying it in any way. You kind of have to experience them for yourself. But Kieślowski I think is a director who many cinephiles know of very well. He is a Polish director, and his films, and he has 41 credits to his name, but he started out doing a lot of looks like documentary shorts, TV documentaries, stuff like that. I want to say his first feature film looks like it didn't come till 1976. And yeah, he did a lot of political stuff, I would say, in Poland in the 1970s, and a lot of TV stuff as well. His anthological film, The Decalogue, well, it's not really a film, it's more of a series.
It's like a limited series,
I believe on Polish television series, and like each one was all about like, I think centering around the 10 Commandments or something like that. And he did the film Blind Chance, which was all about, the way like different, if you take different paths, they can lead to different scenarios happening and all kind of stuff. So he's dealing with films on a very philosophical level. His films are not exactly like light watching.
Yeah, they take a certain amount of attention to.
And what is interesting is he's not even the most serious or heavy director that I'm going to talk about. I think like I'm just. I know what you're gonna. Yeah. I figure if I'm here at the heavy level now, I might as well stay here.
Well, I got one more to talk. I got one more to talk about. Okay. I have one more on my list here, and this is the most modern one we have. This is Tony Scott.
Oh wow!
Unstoppable. we lost Tony Scott not too long ago. He unfortunately
sadly
committed suicide, and but his last movie was Unstoppable, that starred Chris Pine and Denzel Washington, and it's a chase movie. It's basically a train chase movie. Where the train kind of can't be stopped, and they have because it's unstoppable. And
it's unstoppable right there in the
title.
Yeah,
I know, right? And it's a super entertaining movie. Not everybody's a super fan of Tony Scott. I think he did some really good movies. I think sometimes he overused his style. Like some directors do, like a Tim Burton. But I think this was a really solid, pairing, of actors, Chris Pine and Denzel. This was when Chris Pine was just kind of breaking through. He just done Star Trek, and then then this came out, and I think they had good chemistry, and it's a nice little action movie. I would have, of course, loved to see more from Tony Scott. I think I might even like him more than Ridley Scott. Which that's a hot take, I guess. Now, of course, Ridley Scott's done some maybe more profound work, but I mean, I think maybe I just watch more Tony Scott movies. Maybe they're easier watches. I mean, some of Ridley Scott's movies are like kind of obnoxiously long. Kingdom of Heaven director's cut is maybe one of the best things he's done. But like his director's cut of Gladiator's unnecessary.
I was going to say Kingdom of Heaven. That director's cut's like 4 hours and change.
It is, but it's actually better than I think it's better than the original, cut. But like his director's cut of Gladiator's unnecessary. There's no reason to add all what they added in. And then of course he did Blade Runner and he did Alien, and they're seminal movies. But he's also got a lot of crap in there, so it's like He did The Counselor, so
that is very true. I would say Tony Scott is a solid director.
He's a solid action director. Like
Yeah. I mean, he worked with
Denzel a lot.
Denzel quite a few times.
I mean, like Man on Fire is good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we even talked about his first film last time.
Hunger.
We talked about The Hunger, which is a vampire film, which is really good. I mean, he did do Top Gun.
He did a lot of military movies. He did a lot of military. He was kind of like Michael Bay, in a way.
Well, I think he's got more talent.
Well, he's got more talent, but you know what I mean? Like he did the pro-America movie kind of. He did like G.I. Jane. He did like.
He also did Crimson Tide.
Crimson Tide, I think, is his best movie.
True Romance
is great, which is a Quentin Tarantino script.
Yes, it is. Enemy of the State.
I like Enemy of the State.
Is really good. Yeah. I think Enemy of the State's a quasi sequel to
Conversation.
The Conversation with Coppola's film from the 70s, which not a lot
of people
talk about.
It's fun to be like, hey, it's just a sequel to The Conversation. Let's do this. Yeah.
He also did a remake, The Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3 with
That's not too bad.
Denzel. Is a pretty
honestly,
good remake. The original's really good too.
Honestly, I didn't love the original. I watched it.
Really?
I don't love the
Walter
original.
Matthau?
I thought it was kind of boring.
And yeah. Who played? Oh man, he's in Jaws. He was also the bad guy in Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3.
The cop, Roy. Isn't it?
No,
or is it Robert Shaw?
It's Robert Shaw. Yeah. Robert Shaw plays the bad guy in Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3. The original back in the 70s. But yeah, I've always liked Tony Scott. It was a real shame when he
had brain cancer apparently, and it was making him not be himself. So, but very sad. But I thought Unstoppable was a fun last movie.
It really was. Yeah, it came out
2011, 12, 10. Wow. I was close. I guessed.
Because I know for years they were working on the Top Gun 2 sequel, which I guess is still going to happen, but it's coming out next year now, I think, or whenever. And I know that he was working. I think he was working on that when he passed away in 2012. He passed away. It's really, really sad. But I guess I'll go. I guess if we're gonna stay even heavy, because I mean nothing gets heavier than that. I'm gonna go with the last film from another kind of cinephile favorite for many people. And yeah, this is heavy movie in terms of just being able to easily digest it.
Yeah.
And this is The Sacrifice, 1986, directed by Andrei Tarkovsky. And now, those of you out there who know Andrei Tarkovsky understand exactly how heavy his films can be. These films are not for casual film viewers. They're not. They're going to not like it, and they're going to probably stop watching after a little while.
They might even throw a couple cuss words at you.
Yeah, they may even fall asleep because his films are just so cerebral, yet
it's like abstract art. It's like very
much. It's abstract, surreal, philosophical, theological. It's deep. It's dealing with all kinds of big conceptual ideas, but the way he delivers them to you are just so unique to him.
Yeah,
I can't really explain it. Very art house, very avant-garde. And this film is his last film, and this is the synopsis of this film is: at the dawn of World War III, a man searches for a way to restore peace to the world and finds he must give something in return. And yeah, that's the plot of the movie, but there's so much more in it than that. And it's a long movie. It is...
Most of his movies were pretty long.
It's 2 hours and 29 minutes, which isn't exactly super long.
That's like today's long,
Yeah, that's like modern days long, but if you look... His filmography is chock full.
I was going to say, like, Andrei Rublev is, 3.5 hours or something?
Yeah, it's chock full of long movies. I mean, he only has... another director, he only has 12 credits to his name, and not all of them are features. And it's really, really fascinating. Like, so he has a short and, trying to even, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 of these look like feature films, I think. Yeah. And I know I've only seen a couple of them myself. I've seen Stalker, and I've seen Ivan's Childhood, and now I've seen The Sacrifice. I have Andrei Rublev, which, like Steven said, that's a...
That one might...
That's literally a 3.5 hour
That might
tour.
be... People would say that might be one of his easier watches.
Yes.
But it's still hard to watch.
Yeah, I thought Stalker was absolutely amazing.
That one's pretty tough to watch. That one's... there's literally a scene where they're, like, sitting on a train for, like, 15 minutes.
No, it's gorgeous, though.
And
you just
like
a tracking shot. Just you're going through this like Zone X, I think they call it, and it changes from like this yellow world to like color, and it's like, these movies transport you to a place you didn't know existed.
This is the thing with a filmmaker like him. You can obviously really be into his stuff and actually purely like his stuff, but even if you don't. Like, you're not, like, in love with it, you can still respect the filmmakers, like, what he's trying to do. And that's where I come from mostly. Like, so far, I'm not, like, in love with his movies, like, purely. But I'm like, okay, this guy's doing something that nobody else does. So I really respect his stuff.
Yeah, he's a Russian filmmaker. So his films are, I think, predominantly in Russian. Although The Sacrifice was a Swedish film. And he's done like such films like Nostalgia, The Mirror, Solaris. A lot of these films I think a lot of people have either seen or heard of, so I thought I would mention them. But like I said, his films are not for the easy casual film goer. And to be honest, you kind of have to prepare yourself for these, or they're gonna knock you around. They really are. But yeah, that's The Sacrifice, and I couldn't even explain this film if I tried. It's just one of those another ones you've got to experience for yourself.
But it's a Creed documentary. My sacrifice.
Oh, the 90s just
called. Man.
Oh man. But yeah, it's his last film, and it's honestly it's still amazing. Yeah. Like, he went out on a high note. But I want to see if it was truly. Yeah, he did pass away in 1986, so it was
pretty close.
He did. Yeah, pretty close to when he passed, unfortunately. So, Steven, do you have any more on your list? Because I got a few.
Well, I don't have any more to necessarily talk about that I've seen, but I have a couple to mention. Maybe.
Yeah.
Sergio Leone's Once Upon a Time in America is one I was going to mention.
Right.
And we both haven't seen that one, so we can't really talk about it. The other
Correct.
big one that I found that I thought I think you've seen this movie, and that is Edward Yang's Yi Yi is his last movie.
Oh yeah, that movie's amazing. Oh my goodness, yeah. It's a long movie.
Yeah, it's 3.5.
But it's 3.5 hours, but it flies by like you wouldn't believe. It's the only like Edward Yang movie I saw. Like I bought.
I've seen A Brighter Summer
by.
Day, and that movie's great.
Oh, I haven't seen A Brighter Summer Day yet.
I need to watch it. I have Yi Yi on Blu-ray from Criterion, and I need to watch it. But I was like, I don't have the time to. I mean, the movie's so long, I didn't have time to work it in. So, but
Right. I mean, I watched a couple of other films in preparation. I watched An Autumn Afternoon, which was the last film from Yasujiro Ozu, and coincidentally, I watched it after I watched The Sacrifice. It was a complete 180 in every sense of the word.
I'm sure.
In the sense that just tonally, Ozu is so more easily digestible than Tarkovsky. And the film is, once again, it's another film that's similar to being in the same wheelhouse. Basically, it's kind of a quasi-remake of A Late Spring, which was a film he did in like 1949, I think. So an aging widower arranges a marriage for his only daughter. That's the basic premise of the film. But Ozu, his films are so good. The themes they're hitting on are so contemporary, and just the way he shoots his films is he loves to use static cameras, and he doesn't move his camera at all. There's no tracking shots or anything like that. Like if someone's walking down a hallway, he'll place the camera at the end of the hallway so the person's walking towards the camera and turning into a room. It's stuff like that. And you would think that would make the movie like not have any energy to it, but that's not the case at all. Like it's truly unique. So I watched An Autumn Afternoon. I watched Madadeo, which was Akira Kurosawa's last film. That was it's not Kurosawa's best film, but if you had to go out on a film, that's a solid film to go out on. It's a movie that's about this beloved professor and how his former students like just loved him so much that they just cherish him so much that they just take care of him a lot over time. Like they come over to have dinner with him, they like find him a place to live and all this kind of stuff, and it's a really like heartwarming film in that regard. It dips a little bit in the middle with a certain plot point that I won't get into, but it kind of just like stalls a little bit. But the first and third acts I thought were really good. I also watched there's some bad films I watched. I'm just gonna mention it. I'm just gonna throw it out there, Steven, because I told you I was gonna do it. John Cassavetes' Big Trouble came out in 1986, and it's a zany comedy screwball remake of Double Indemnity with a completely different third act that takes it into another area.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's a lot of examples of filmmakers that ended up maybe going longer than they should have. Or maybe they just didn't have anything else to say and they weren't making great movies at the end of their career.
Yeah, and I mean, also, but then there are also people who, like we said, like Charlie Chaplin, apparently his last film, A Countess from Hong Kong in 1967, isn't a great film, although it stars Marlon Brando and Sophia Loren. So that's enough to get me to watch it.
Sure, yeah.
Even though I heard it's not great. But another film that I want to mention is Max Ophuls' Lola Montez, 1955, is really, really solid film. But unfortunately, he, along with someone like Ernst Lubitsch, Anthony Mann, and other filmmakers that I can't quite recall now, passed away before they could officially complete their last films. You know, Ernst Lubitsch, his film That Lady in Ermine, he passed away 8 days after completing like principal photography, so he didn't get to put it together in post. Otto Preminger had to step in and finish that film. I think Max Ophuls' Lola Montez, I don't even think they finished filming that film. And it's a fictionalized biography of like a scandalized 19th century courtesan, and it's a really great film. If you know anything about Max Ophuls, his films are gorgeous to look at. He did The Airings of Madame D, which he did like long, like one-shot takes. Like he was one of the first people to do like one-shot, like long takes of like people walking and stuff like that. He was absolutely great. I would highly recommend checking that out. But one that's near and dear to my heart is, of course... Now, Steven, this gets into a little bit of semantics like we had last time.
Oh, man.
Orson Welles' last film, up until 2 years ago, was F for Fake, and now it's The Other Side of the Wind. So which one do you count? For the sake of argument...
I would say, argument's sake, I would say F for Fake because it was the one he actually helped he completed it.
Yeah, he was the one he actually completed it himself.
Yeah.
I guess it's cool to just throw out The Other Side of the Wind. Not throw it out, but just like mention it.
Sure.
That it was a movie that he didn't get to complete himself, but it was able to be completed, 25, 30 years after he passed away. But F for Fake is all about like forgery and falsehood, and it's a bit of a documentary, a bit of a faux documentary, but it's also a documentary. It's so incredibly unique. It's another like masterpiece by Orson Welles. The Other Side of the Wind, just for mentioning sake, it's a narrative film, but it's so, the way it's edited is crazy. He shot it like at one of his houses that he was renting somewhere, and he shot it over a few years, and man, it's such a weird guerrilla style film that it's so incoherent yet brilliant. So I wanted to mention that. And another one near and dear to my heart is, of course, Agnes Varda, whose last film, Faces Places, was nominated for an Oscar in 2017. And luckily, not only that film, but all of her films are going to be in a new Criterion Blu-ray box set, a la the Ingmar Bergman set, which came out 2 years ago.
Yeah, I don't know.
So that was a big release this week.
I don't know that I've seen any of her movies. I've always known about her, but I don't think I've seen it. So this is me. I'm going to be buying that set, and I will be getting my education. So
yeah, I've seen a few of her films. Like I've seen a lot of her early stuff, like her first film, which I mentioned last week, but like Cleo from 5 to 7, Vagabond, some of her like California short films that she did. And of course, Faces Places I've seen as well. But she's just, her films are very unique, and she ended kind of on top. Getting nominated for an Oscar. All the crap that we give the Oscars is a pretty nice way to end your career.
Oh yeah. Well, anything else? Any other one? Let's not go crazy, but When
the Devil Knows You're Dead.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Sidney Lumet. Yeah.
Sidney Lumet is a really
I'll tell you what,
film.
that man, I think out of a lot of the filmmakers we've talked about, I feel like that guy is maybe the most chameleon out of, he was able to adjust his filmmaking style so much throughout his career. Like, I feel like when you got to Before the Devil Knows You're Dead, he looked like he was a youthful filmmaker. The way the movie looks, the actors, are performing. Like, for a guy that was as old as he was able to make movies that had an energy, kind of like Scorsese. That he made movies that were beyond what you would expect somebody of his age to be making movies about. That movie, Ethan Hawke's in it. It's a pretty damn good last movie.
Yeah, it really is. And I think he shot that film on digital, and I remember in the special features for that movie, he mentions how big of a supporter he was of digital filmmaking, because it was just starting to rise up around that time, because that movie came out early 2007. Yeah, so it was a while ago. There are, of course, so many more other films that we could mention by such greats as Robert Altman, which we talked about a lot when we did our 70s stuff. He did A Prairie Home Companion in 2006. For some reason, I thought Gosford Park was his last movie. I guess I was way off on that. And, of course, there are people like, Pasolini. Pier Paolo Pasolini, his last film was Salo, or The 120 Days of Sodom. You don't really go out on more of a controversial movie than that.
Or the old joke, Night of the Hunter.
Yeah, The Night of the Hunter, which was both the first and last film of Charles Laughton. You had Otto Preminger's The Human Factor, which I watched. It's an okay movie. Cecil B. DeMille did The Ten Commandments. Vincente Minnelli did A Matter of Time. I mean, you have Fellini's last film. I also want to mention Ernst Lubitsch's last film, The Lady in Ermine, which I think I did.
You did.
Which I did. Yeah. Fortunately, he wasn't able to finish that. That was actually his first musicals that he had done since like 1934, because he started off doing musicals in his career. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
There were some notable ones and some ones that were pretty good last films from.
I'll say this though, someone who went out kind of how he got his claim to fame was David Lean when he did A Passage to India.
Yeah,
A Passage to India is a long movie, and this came out in like 1984. This wasn't back in the day when people were doing the long epics. He basically did an epic in 1984, and this movie is 2 hours and 44 minutes. So he went out like he rose to the top.
And that was an Oscar movie too, I think.
I think you're right. Yes, it was.
Yeah, I think it got nominated for Best Picture. But I mean, a lot of great movies that you can find. I mean, like you said, a lot of times you start from the beginning to the end. Sometimes maybe you should just start at the end and see where they ended up and then go backwards.
Right, and work backwards.
Yeah, that's interesting. But I think that'll be it for this episode of the Cinema Discovery Project. Where can we find you, Andrew?
You can find me on Twitter at Capzilla06, as well as my YouTube channel, Capzilla Productions.
And you can find me on Facebook, Stephen Billings. You can find me on Instagram, Cinema Discovery Project, or on Letterboxd. And next week, or in a couple weeks, we'll be doing another Spotlight. I'm not sure what we're going to do yet, but it'll be something fun, I'm sure. But that'll be it for this episode. Thanks for listening. Go to Podbean or Apple Podcasts to listen to us. And we will see you next time. And hey, keep on watching them movies.
I know I will.